Okay, I want to go over the examples for our first set of notes on order of operations and dealing with evaluating. So let's see, I've got some mess here. Let's clean it up. Oops. Okay. So our directions are going to tell us to simplify. Now, what the directions are not going to say, but they imply that you understand, is that you're going to show each step. And I apologize for the goofiness of how this writing looks, but that's just how it's going to work. Okay, so remember we kind of went, instead of saying PEMDAS, we went with GEMA, because multiplication and division, actually, you can change any division problem to a multiplication problem by multiplying by the reciprocal. And subtraction you can change to addition by adding the opposite. So it's not really a change. So we're going to focus in on, if we want to keep it with multiplication and division, and remember we also talked about this is one of the rare times you're actually going to see the multiplication symbol, the old x, because from here on out when we see x we're going to assume it's a variable. So with order of operations, if you have both multiplication and division, you go to the left of the problem, that's the beginning, and you move towards the right, and you do any multiplication or division that you can do as you go from left to right. So the very first thing I see is this division problem. There were no parentheses, there were no exponents, so this is where I begin. And I get 18 divided by 2 is 9, and then I write in the rest of the problem, times 3. And then I can do that, and 9 times 3 is 27, and there's my first answer. Second problem, going to get a little bit more complicated, and we're going to include some grouping symbols and not just one. Oops, we're going to put in 2. So, oops, nope, it was right, sorry. Okay, so we have 20 divided by the quantity 2 times the quantity 9, take away 7, close the quantity, close the quantity. So again, we're going to have to start with grouping symbols, but when I have 2, I go to the innermost grouping symbol first. So that 9 take away 7 is 2, and then I write out the rest of the problem around it. So I didn't deal with the multiplication yet, and I certainly haven't divided yet. So again, order of operations says you do anything in a grouping symbol. So our next level is to deal with this set of brackets, and we get 2 times 2 is 4, and we write out the rest of the problem, and we have 20 divided by 4. I get lazy about putting in my division symbols, sorry about that. And then I can do this problem very easily. It's a math fact, 20 divided by 4 is 5, and that's the answer. Okay, I have one more with this set of directions. Let's see if we can fit it in here. This one's a bit of a doozy. We have 30 minus 2 times the quantity, 13 minus 40 divided by 4, all over 12 minus 5 plus 1. Okay, so we had talked about in our notes that one of the grouping symbols is a fraction bar, but in order to utilize the fraction bar as a grouping symbol, I have to have one number in the numerator, one number in the denominator. So that's where my focus is going to be. So I'm going to look in the numerator, and I notice that I have a grouping symbol. And in the grouping symbol, I have 2 operations. Of the 2 operations, subtraction and division, the division, is going to take priority. So I'm going to come up with that answer. Yet at the same time, I can look at the denominator, because the answer I get in the numerator has no effect on the denominator. And I have both adding and subtracting, so I'm going to go at the beginning of the problem, and as adding or subtracting shows up as I go from left to right. So I'm going to start by doing the 12 minus 5. So right now I've got 30 minus 2 times the quantity, 13 minus the result of 40 divided by 4 is 10, all over 12 take away 5 is 7 plus 1. Okay, next round I still have a grouping symbol, so I'm going to do the 13 minus 10, and at the same time I can do the 7 plus 1. So I get You know what, I'm going to go back and color code. Let me change something here for a moment. So the result of 40 divided by 4 was 10, and the result of 12 take away 5 was 7. Okay, let's go back to our blue. So on this now, we don't do anything to the 30 or the subtraction or the 2, but it's what's inside the parentheses that's going to change. And 13 take away 10 is 3. And 7 plus 1 is going to give us 8. Okay, all right, next level. Up in the numerator, we have multiple operations, and the priority between subtraction and multiplication is the multiplication. Now, I'm going to go ahead and shift our problem just over to the side here. And so I still have the 30. And I still have the minus, but now the 2 times 3 is 6. And I have already finished the denominator is 8. So I have one more problem to do on the top. Very easy problem. 30 take away 6 is 24 over the 8. And then my final answer, 24 divided by 8, is 3. Okay, I have a next problem we're going to do. And now the directions are going to change, because now I'm going to give you, we're still going to do order of operations because we're going to have multiple operations, but we're going to hear the word evaluate. And anytime I hear the word evaluate, I know that means that I'm going to see variables in my original problem. So we're going to evaluate for x equals 4, y equals 2, and z equals 6. So for all the problems that come here that you're going to see that have an x, a y, or a z, x is always going to be 4, y is always going to be 2, z is always going to be 6. Okay? Once the evaluate and they give me different values for the variables, then I'll plug those in. So our first problem is xy plus 3z. So what I'm going to do is start by replacing all the variables with their values. Now xy means x times y, so I'm going to start my problem with 4 times the y value 2 plus 3 times the z value of 6. So now I'm looking at order of operations, and I have 3 operations. I have multiplication, addition, and multiplication. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the beginning of the problem and do any multiplication or division. There is no parentheses, there is no exponents, no grouping symbols. So I'm going to do 4 times 2. But here's the interesting thing. There is a addition sign that separates another multiplication problem from this first multiplication problem. The rules say it's okay to take care of it, because the answer I get to 4 times 2 has no effect on the answer that I get for 3 times 6. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 times 6 is 18. I have 8 and 18, is 26, and that's my answer. Now, last problem is going to be the weird one. So we have xyz divided by 2x. Now, here's where it gets weird. Because these are variables, we have no idea what the author of this problem meant by 2x. Did he mean 2 times the x value, or did he mean, let me back up. Did he mean divide by 2, whatever the product of x, y, z was, divided by 2, then multiplied by x? Or did he mean to take that product x, y, z and divide it by the quantity 2x? Because we don't know what the author meant, we need to go to our 2x, and we're going to look at him as if he is a group. So he needs to belong together. Okay, so as I'm going through this, I'm going to go ahead and replace all my numbers. So I have x is 4 times y is 2, sometimes my times don't show up real well on this. And z is 6 divided by the quantity, and just use parentheses here, 2 times 4. Okay, so order of operations, we have a grouping symbol, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that 2 times 4. At the same time, multiplication and division and all the rest of what I have left, and I go to the beginning and I can do any multiplication as I go from left to right. So I can also take care of that 4 times 2. So that gives me, oops, sorry, let me change my color, 8 times 6 divided by the product 8. Okay, so the next step says go to the beginning of the problem, do any multiplication or division as it shows up. So we have a multiplication problem, and 4 times 6 is 48. The rest of the problem is divided by 8. And then we can solve that real simply. 48 divided by 8 is 6. Alright, so that's how you can solve these sorts of problems. And watch out for the trick on 5. Most likely is going to show up on the test. Alright, great. Thank you.